You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us again on the Seafood Matters podcast. You can help us by pressing subscribe. In this episode, we have Michael Tait. Michael is Managing Director of Shetland Mussels Ltd, a board member and past chairman of Scottish Shellfish Marketing Group, and past board member of Sustainable Aquaculture Innovation Centre. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me along today. It's exciting to be here.
Thank you. Michael, looking at your past, where you've come through as far as your chairmanships and things, that tells me you've given a lot of time back to your industry.
Yeah, well, I was kind of thinking back on this, and I've probably spent the vast majority of my life in the seafood industry in one way or another, Jim. I suppose going right back, it was probably when my dad started the salmon farm back in '88 was when I started really getting involved and helping him out around. So I kind of grew up on a fish farm, really. So I guess you kind of get much younger as that, and I must have been about 12. I worked there through the holidays and went away to uni and did a bit of engineering in a degree, and then came back to Shetland after the graduate trainee scheme and managed to get a job at the Fisheries College there, helping with the marine hatchery that they were developing, and then went back to the family business for a while and helped kind of get Shetland Mussels started, back in probably around about 97 we started that, which at the time was a bit of a diversification project from the salmon farming that was happening still at that time. And then I got a bit of a chance to go and do something different and got a job with a multinational salmon farming company for a while, which was called Cermaq, and the local Scottish bit was called Mainstream. So I got a good chance to work up in Yell with some of the guys up there on the sites, being production manager, and then eventually I was the MD after about 8 years there. And then came back to the family business. My dad was wanting to retire, and so it was time to really kind of put my shoulder to the wheel with the family business, and me and my brother kind of took it forward to there. And I've been back probably since early 2008 and just started really trying to keep it going and keep it growing, and that's kind of where I've been for the last wee while.
So you've really come through the industry and just taken over from your father, really, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't start off in aquaculture. He was involved with the oil industry, but he saw the opportunity back in the late 80s to get involved with the salmon farming, and like a lot of folk in Shetland, that was like a chance to get into business, do something new at that time. And yeah, I suppose I just sort of started at the bottom, pushing wheelbarrows of salmon feed around cages and learning about fish and changing nets and how things work in the sea. And I suppose everything else followed on from that. And yeah, getting into the mussel farming at the time when we sort of switched from salmon to mussels, it was just, we felt as a family business it fitted better with a small family enterprise like we were. And, we didn't have to pay for feed. We didn't have the sort of the risk associated with the fish swimming around in circles at risk at any given time. So it was, the model of mussel farming was something that we felt was exciting for us to try.
Yeah, that's good that you're foresighted and keeping looking, obviously, to see how things can be improved and things work better for yourselves. I like things evolve. There's no question of that. And so basically the history of Shetland Mussels Ltd is you started as a salmon farm and progressed on from there. Is it the same site that you've used for both?
Well, the original site we started trying experimenting with the mussels was the very first site that my father had the first 5,000 salmon in, way back in the day. And that's such a tiny number compared to salmon numbers nowadays. But it's the same site, that one. But for to make a business out of the mussel farming, we had to get more sites involved. So we changed all the salmon sites. We had 4. We changed them all over to mussel farming, and then we started to find new opportunities for sites, and we took over a few other operations along the way that people that had started out and then it had plenty, so they wanted to sell and stop doing it. So now we're up at running roughly 35 sites all around Shetland, and we've actually started a couple of sites down in the Western Isles lately as well, trying our hand. Same techniques, but just in a different geography.
That's really fascinating. And am I right, is mussels need deeper water than salmon?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think salmon farming has gone increasingly deeper over the years as they've searched for maybe, more tidal, more open sites. So I guess in Shetland what's happened is a lot of the sites that the salmon farmers have left because they've maybe thought they're not deep enough for them and not suitable. That's opened up opportunities to have mussel sites on some of the old salmon sites more inshore. Certainly in some of the areas where we try and collect the baby mussels, that can be quite shallow for us. So shallow is not really a massive issue, but it's easier and a bit more productive when we can get the droppers down to maybe 15 metres deep. I suppose I maybe need to explain shortly a bit about maybe how mussel farming works before we get into too many of the details like that. But I don't know if you want to go into that next.
Absolutely, it would be fascinating.
Well, I suppose the process, like if folk have been up in Shetland or in Scotland, they maybe have seen mussel farm sites, and basically you need an area of water that you can use. On that, we lay out a horizontal series of lines, and they can be quite long, say maybe 200 metres long up to 400 metres long. So it's a series of floats attached with ropes, and it looks like a big sort of grid on the water surface. And then down from that, we have the droppers hanging into the sea on which the mussels can grow. So it's basically like a vertical forest hanging from these floats on the surface of the water. And the process starts when we have to catch the baby mussels, and they're just floating in the sea with all the other planktonic animal stages at certain times of the year. So late spring, summer, we have to catch the baby mussels. And if we're successful, we catch them on bare rope, and we would leave them in those locations for maybe a year. And then we would take them off those ropes, strip them off, and we'd redistribute them onto a different type of rope where we can control the density. So we can try and put them on so they're just the right amount of mussels to get to the harvest weight, roughly about maybe 800 shells per metre of that kind of rope. And then we grow them through another 2 years. So it's a 3-year process, which, if you're likening that to agricultural farming, we're much more like a livestock business than an arable farm. It's quite a long cycle for us up in Shetland here.
When you say that, would it be longer for you in Shetland than maybe further south?
Yeah, I would say so. If you were in Spain, which I suppose is if I just go due south of here and look at an area that's still capable of farming mussels, then it's they can probably farm them in 12 months, maybe a bit longer, maybe 14 months to full size, whereas we would take the full 3 years. So there is maybe a little bit of a business disadvantage in that, but given that Shetland it still has good nutrients, it's got a pretty placid temperature profile in the sea, and we are lucky that the waters are all A grade all the time. So the pristine sea conditions around here make it good for us for other reasons.
And do you feel would I be right in thinking from what you're saying there, there would be a slight similarity with animal farming from the point of view that it's always better quality, slower growing?
Yeah, I like that idea, and I think there is an advantage to probably the slower growing in some ways. I think the meats and the taste of the mussels that we produce in Shetland are really well thought of. So I think that does stand up to some scrutiny like that. The challenge at taking a little bit longer is you're waiting around a bit longer and you can potentially have issues with barnacles settling on the shells and stuff. So we just had to keep an eye on that, and that's just a wee bit about. There's a husbandry element to this in getting those densities right when you take them from the spat locations to the growing sites, and you just got to try and just hit that sweet spot where the mussels are not too crowded on the ropes, but there's enough of them there that they kind of protect each other from things that could settle on their shells floating past. So it's been a lot of learning in the last a couple of decades, I suppose you could say, where we've tried to figure out what's the best densities to try and put the shells onto the ropes at.
Of the mussels, any natural predators?
Yeah, we've got a few of them up here. Some of them are direct predators, like eider ducks can eat them. That's something that can happen. Starfish will also especially target the small stages, like when they're really young. But another sort of pressure that we can have is if other creatures settle onto the ropes in too high numbers, like seaweeds or sea squirts or stuff, then the problem then is that they're just out competing. So, what we create when we put the mussel sites out and we put the mussels in is we're kind of creating an environment where lots of different animals can exist. And so we just try our best to manage it. But there at any time on a fully going mussel site, there'll be 75 to 90 different species of animals out there hanging on to the mooring ropes at the edges or underneath the floats. And they're having a great time. So it's there's a kind of an ecosystem that we're creating as well as we go about our farming activities.
One of the things I have to say about yourselves, Shetland Mussels Ltd, I had a seafood restaurant in Scrabster for 20 years. Now, although it wasn't direct, I have to say, and I'm not saying this because I'm here talking to you, my request would be for your mussels. And for many years, I would say that was the case. Campbell's was the company I got them from. And I often thought of myself, it would be the fact that maybe the temperatures and the nutrients quality of the water as well as your husbandry. Because the mussels, Michael, were all the meat, you would open the shell and it was absolutely full there was no spaces. And I always felt that they would keep so much better than mussels from other places. I'd have a far better shelf life with them.
Well, I think that's some of the other lessons that we've learned, and I think everybody in the industry is getting better at it too, in terms of managing the logistics chain for harvest right the way through. So there's a lot about how you handle them. I mean, you can do a lot of good work and grow beautiful mussels for 3 years, and then if you mishandle the harvesting process, for example, or you get your chill chain wrong, or you get your logistics wrong, then you can undo a lot of good work in a matter of hours, literally. It's quite disappointing if things go wrong. So it's the simple things, like when the mussels are going through the machine. So when we come to harvest them, we obviously have to take the boat to the site and pull the lines up. We have to take the mussels off the rope. We have to declump them into single shells. We have to wash them. We grade them on the boat, and then they're taken away for further packing. But the less work you can do to them, the better, really. That's the thing. They're an animal just like everything else that's in that category, and they don't like stress. They don't like being extra handled. They don't like being dropped. You just got to be kind of careful how you handle it. And yeah, I mean, I think most of the firms that's like, I think we try hard, but I think all the other firms as well try really hard to keep their quality up. And I'd like to hope that misfolk that are trying mussels from Shetland or Scotland have good experiences with them, I hope.
Well, I have to say I have had many a good experience with them. And personally for me, with my chef's hat on, not that I'm wearing it now, but with putting the chef hat on, I would say if I had a choice between what you described about the Spanish mussel and the Shetland mussel, every time I would have the Shetland mussel. And I would feel that you, as a grower, is maybe having to, you're obviously, it's more expensive to keep them for 3 years than it is for less than one. But I think the customers get the benefit for it. So what's your views on your ethos as far as your quality and sustainability is concerned?
Well, that's a huge part of the message that we're trying to get across to our customers. It's really important to us. And I think mussels is a hugely sustainable type of food to eat. If folk can eat that with a really clean conscience. And one of the aspects of that is that we have our MSC accreditation, which is been really powerful. I think a lot of people will know that when they're in the supermarkets, they'll see the blue label with MSC written on it, and we've had that for 12 years now. And so that's a process where we get reaccredited every few years, and the MSC officials ask any stakeholder in the community or in Shetland or anybody that's got an interest in what we do can comment. And, we've had that reaccreditation now for a dozen years, like I say, so that's pretty powerful. In addition to that, we're one of the lowest carbon footprints type of food that you can get. So, in terms of that sort of environmental credential, we're something like, I think the number was 264 kilos of carbon per ton of mussels, landed on the pier, which is 90% less than beef, pork or lamb, to put a little bit of context. I mean, it's super low, and it beats, either even things like poultry and salmon, which are seen sometimes as being low carbon. We're even kind of beating them a bit. So I think, in terms of that, it's pretty good. And then you've got the other layers, like if you think about it, that we are removing nutrients from the ocean, which is handy when you consider that human beings spend most of the time putting nutrients into the sea. That, mussel farmers, we've got filter feeding animals working, and we're basically taking the nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus and stuff, back out in the form of plankton, turning it into mussels, which people can eat.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
It's a really healthy thing to eat as well. So we'll maybe come on to that more. But in terms of quality, yeah, I mean, everything, the quality is almost has to be standard. I didn't really go around saying high quality mussels for sale here. It's just has to be high quality. And all the systems that we've got in place in the company for just-in-time harvests and checking on the fact that the mussels are all in good order, the pre-harvest sampling that we do and so on, that backs up everything that we do for 3 years. And then when you get that right, as you are able to kind of confirm that the eating result for the public is excellent. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think mussels out of Scotland and Shetland specifically are really good, and we eat them all the time. Me and my family, we love them. My kids love them. Yeah, I'm always trying to advocate for folk to eat more mussels when I can persuade them to do it.
Do you feel there's anything unique for Shetland as far as growing?
We're at 60 North, so we're quite far up the country, but we do benefit still from the Gulf Stream coming in here. We have enjoyed a really supportive council locally. The council back here when we started in 97 had a good foresight to help the sites get established. So that was super useful. And we were a pretty small enterprise trying to get going, and they had a development department locally that was helping the business element of things, really giving direct support and loans and advice. That was helpful. So I think the Shetland scenery has been really good for starting this seafood business anyway. And then I think also we benefit that the whitefish sector is here, that the salmon sector is here, and that now the mussel farming sector is here too. And we rely on things like having, good access to engineering services, but also, more vital is probably the nightly ferry service that leaves Shetland and heads straight to Aberdeen or via Orkney sometimes. But the fact that we can put mussels out of Shetland any day of the week and it goes reliably, we couldn't do this business if we didn't have access to that sort of infrastructure. So Shetland's been really good like that. And we've got good ports and harbours locally, good road infrastructure. And I would probably add, or my guys back at the shore base will kill me if they hear this later, is we've got great staff up here. We've got a really good work ethos. We've got folk that really know how to deal with boats and the marine environment, and we have people that probably are not that far removed. They have direct crafting experience and know how to look after livestock and look after things like that. So I think all of these points come together to give us a recipe that can work. Yeah.
Would you look for areas that have good tidal movement and maybe water oxygen displacement? And
there's two different things we're looking for the different roles for a site that I just maybe touched on earlier. That to catch the spat, to catch the baby mussels, we're looking for quite still water, quite in the bays, or as in Shetland we call them the voes. So right up the voe, near a burn, near a freshwater outlet would be ideal. Those areas seem to be quite reliable for catching the baby mussels next to. And then you don't want to leave them there too long, because as the biomass would grow, there wouldn't maybe be access to food. So for the second 2 years, you want tide, you want depth, you want more openness, but you don't want it too rough, because the mussels are hanging on for dear life with their best strides. If it's too rough, then you might lose some, they might fall off. So a happy medium for that second side of it is the best.
The other thing, I hope I'm not jumping around here, but you talk about our mussels are a natural filter. And am I right in thinking that they can actually clean water?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they're taking on board, maybe up to 15 litres of water a day each shell. So they're quite prolific filter feeders, and then they extract from the water the plankton, algae, and some other organic material that they can then use to turn into the mussel meat that's inside the shell. Part of what we have to do is make sure we're providing enough food. We don't have to feed them directly, and that's one of the beauties and reasons why our carbon footprint is low, is that the feed comes to us on the tide. So we just stay in the same place and the tide comes to us.
Yeah.
So we don't have to manufacture the feed and we don't have to take it to the site. But we do have to be careful about how many mussels we place in each area. So one of the other sustainability elements, I suppose, I should have mentioned earlier, was each voe and each bay around Scotland is, if you're applying for a site like this, the authorities would work out the carrying capacity for that area. So we have to try and make sure that we're only growing the amount of mussels in any place that the area can stand. And that's good for us as well as the environment, because then the mussels are going to grow properly, they're going to grow at the right speed, they're going to have the right amount of meat, and they're going to have nice strong shells. So these are some of the quality parameters that we do have to keep an eye on. Yeah.
So really, with the water filtration, habitat creation, they're good for us and good for the environment.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's been some debate over the years whether mussels sequester carbon dioxide, straight out of the water, and help kind of counteract climate change. But I don't think that holds up with the chemistry of the composition of the shells. And that's a bit unfortunate. But the fact that they're low carbon, that they're doing their filtration job, that they're creating these, habitats on the sites, that all of these things kind of sort of stand together to give us a really good, environmental story and a good quality story as well. Yeah.
I mean, when you think of the goodness in mussels, if you were to look at all the sort of things like essential minerals, multi-nutrients and that our body needs, you could almost find every one of them in mussels.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that is really interesting. Mussels, I mean, they're full of omega-3s, they're full of vitamin B12, and I think there's all these other micronutrients in there as well that are super kind of valuable to eat. So there's a lot of people will go to town on having all a whole heap of vitamins and stuff, but when you see what's available in a natural food source like mussels, it's kind of actually why people wonder, because it's all there. It's high in protein. It's got zinc and copper at sort of healthy levels. It's got the vitamin B12, like I mentioned. So it's got a lot going for it. Yeah, I think the more we could persuade folk to try them, the better.
I had a podcast recently with a woman from the Rowett Institute, Aberdeen University, and on nutritional values of seafood. And she says how good mussels are. And one of the things we get, which I wasn't aware of myself, was a vitamin D. And we talk about it and ask her, besides, I always was of the mind that we got our vitamin D from the sun. But she says, yes, we do in the summer, but in the winter, we get it from seafood.
There you go. So, yeah, it's pretty valuable at this time of year, especially in Shetland. I knew what time were we recording? Yeah, so it's getting dark here soon. So there's not much daylight to be topping up your vitamin D
exactly
from there.
Yeah. Looking at the broader industry, what's your views on the current health of the Scottish seafood industry?
Well, I think some areas look like they're doing great, and I think some areas look like they're doing quite well. I mean, it's hard to sort of look at it at the moment and see, for where I'm sitting, in this industry anyway, that it's gone. I don't see any major negatives, but you do worry with the state of the economy right now, with the sort of the miserable seafood sales in the UK retailers doing a wee bit, and that's kind of a worry. I think people maybe didn't quite hit the same amount to spend. And we're a very UK-based business, through the cooperative that we're a member of, marketing through to retail, we kind of noticed these sorts of trends. So that's a bit of a concern. And I guess the whole seafood industry's, had to, deal with the aftermath of things like Brexit and COVID, and then the whole recent few years of inflation, which is being topped up now by the government with the increased cost of employing people. So it seems to have been just one big issue after another for us to contend with. It's certainly not been an easy, what would you say, 6 or 7 years. It's been quite a challenging period of time. But, I think everybody has to deal with it in the different parts of the industry, and I can't really talk on behalf of either parts of it, but certainly we've had to deal with our fair share of those key points.
No, that's very valid points. And I was going to ask about the challenges anyway. And is the climate change, not that I'm big on climate change, but does that have a hand to play in?
Well, we kind of hope not. I mean, it's hard to know where that's going to go, Jim. So we're quite far north in the mussel growing zone. I do hear of problems in Europe with mussel growers down there having stock completely lost because of hot temperatures that they're no used to having in places like Spain, France and Greece. We've had the situations in some years where they've really suffered.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
So you don't really want to hear about that, happening to the folk that are just trying their best to run their businesses. But in Shetland, we're probably well within the comfort zone of what mussels can stand. So on that front, I'm reasonably optimistic. But how, things like tipping points in climate change might affect the Gulf Stream, that might affect things like plankton availability for shellfish, we just don't know. So we just have to keep an open mind. But I do think that we need to always become better at understanding what's going on in the environment that we're using to grow our food in. And we are trying to put together some science at the moment. We've recently been successful getting some money for the next 9 years to do a project that's got the title Shell-volution, which is going to have a couple of themes, but basically it's going to be getting some science projects keyed up from industry and hopefully taken on by the academic people in Scotland and beyond to deliver the projects. And we really want to have a really good look at some areas like spat availability, like the growing capacity of our areas, and also a bit about sharing best practice between farms. But that's been a long time getting that project off the ground, but we're in the middle, as we're recording this, of the recruitment process for the jobs, for the first 2 jobs that'll be tied up with that project.
On the climate change Trump will sort it out.
Do you think so, Jim? I'm not so sure about that.
You're not convinced?
I'm not totally convinced.
Does regulation and licensing have an issue with you?
Yeah, I mean, within, we've got a lot of regulations that we have to work within. I guess you can imagine that to have each site, we have to have multiple documentations to hold that legally, like Crown Estate leases. We need planning permission. We need permission from the Northern Lighthouse Board. So there's all that, but it's okay. We've had to go through a lot of that, and these permissions tend to be quite long lasting, so that's no problem. We have a lot of work we do with the government, like with the Food Standards Agency, to get the sites classified and to prove that shellfish is safe all the time. And we're running around all the time with our small boats, taking samples and signing that into these programs. And originally, before Brexit, these programs were Europe-wide, so they were quite cumbersome. But nothing much has changed since Brexit, I can tell you. They're no less cumbersome doing these things. Although probably as industry people, we could see there being very much more efficient ways of doing the same work and demonstrating the same sort of level of safety. And I think maybe the other thing with regulations for me would be just making sure that the waters stay as pristine as they are. We don't want to hear, about pollution incidents or water systems, that don't function as they should. It's horrific hearing what's been going on in England over the last few years, I guess, when you hear about water systems routinely spewing sewage into the sea, and that's just horrendous for anybody that's trying to farm a filter feeding animal in those sorts of waters. So I'm hoping those companies are getting themselves sorted out. But in our locality, there's not many people, and all the systems that are in place to deal with the small populations that we have seem to be functioning really well. So that's kind of a good thing, but we're always alert to protecting it.
Yeah. And do you actually still see opportunities for growth and innovation in the industry?
We do. As per to kind of looking ahead, if you look at the number of sites that we've got and you look at the performance of some of the best farms and the best, operations at the moment, if that was being done across all the sites, we should be producing somewhere like 18,000 tonnes of mussels a year out of Scotland, easily. Currently, we're into 2023, which was the last data we have. We just got over the 10,000 tonnes for the first time. So we think we could get to that stage with just being a bit smarter about how we're doing it. I think the growth is there, and I think also we can see a path to being able to market that sort of volume of tonnage. I'm been in this long enough now to remember back probably in 2002 when the tonnage for the sector was maybe 3,000 tonnes. So, we've got the 3,000 to 10,000, and if we could get to 18,000 tonnes across the next 12 years, that would be very powerful and be excellent for rural Scotland. To have all that value coming back, the jobs that will create would be really useful.
And do you feel the market is there for that increase?
Yeah, I think we'll have to do some work in that area, and we can come back on maybe more to the marketing shortly. But I think we've done a good job of offering a good offering within the UK marketplace, I would say. Through the cooperative that we're a member of, through Scottish Shellfish, we're doing mussels into all the main retailers. I could name check them, but if you can see vacuum packed mussels in the supermarket in the UK right now, it's probably come through our cooperative. But to do that sort of extra volume, we'll be looking for opportunities to go a little bit further afield. And
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Getting mussels into Europe is still possible, even though Brexit made it harder, for sure. It did make it more difficult. Because our mussels are from A-grade waters, it's still on the table. And it just means it's much, much harder. Like, we have to get them through the border at the channel, and the officials there think there's too much seaweed on top of a bag of mussels or something like that, then it can all be turned back and it's heading north before you can blink an eye. So we're learning, but I think in the future we'll hopefully, continually get better at doing that.
Sorry, did I miss something there, Michael? When you says, do you get pulled up if you have too much seaweed?
It's basically the regulation is when you're exporting this stuff new, because it's a live animal and it has to be A-grade mussels, you're really alluding nothing else but that exact product as per what it says on the paperwork. So you're not alluding anything like what I guess they would call an alien species to be in the batch. So you have to be doing a really good job on the farm to make sure it's okay for that sort of live export.
My goodness, I would have thought that was a way of keeping it cool and...
Nobody said regulations were anything about common sense.
No, well, that's for sure. I can go back as a kid when I was picking, maybe mussels, mostly winkles, off the beaches. That's what we would do. We would obviously keep them in the water as long as we could, but that's how we would do. And we would always put seaweed in the top of the bag before we closed it.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's just good to keep the moisture level.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier. Could you tell our listeners what Shell-volution is?
Well, we were keen to try and get a bit more science and a bit more knowledge involved in the industry, and up until now, we've built this whole thing on just experience and kind of putting a wet finger in the air and trying to figure out when the best time to catch the spat is. But it's always complicated and a very moving feast, So we managed to go. The listeners might be familiar with hearing about city deals for certain conurbations in Scotland. Got city deals to help them grow their economies, and then there was the islands deal was done for the Western Isles, Orkney, and Shetland. As part of that, we put forward this idea for doing Shell-volution, which was to get £4.4 million of research money for the next 9 years. And it's taken probably 4 years to get it across the line, to get the approvals for it. But the powerful thing for us is it allows us to do science work over a long time. So it's not like often funding comes along and you might have to spend the money within a few months or a year. But mussels take 3 years to grow. So if we want to learn systematically over time, then the Shell-volution project hopefully will allow us to employ some brainy people who will be able to come and help us with pretty routine and hands-on problems. We kind of hope that we can improve in 3 main areas, I suppose. I did kind of mention them, but one of them is the spat reliability. It would be really cool in time, for example, if we could have some sort of monitoring happening, either through technology or some sort of lab work, to tell each farmer in each area when to put the droppers in to catch the spat. And if we could become more reliable, then that will lead to better volume. I talked a bit about the carrying capacities. It would be interesting to investigate that a bit further and just check with a few more parameters, because at the moment it's just about volume of water in an area rather as maybe the tidal flow or the temperatures or the plankton and so on. And then the third thing is, who's doing what things best right now, and how could other guys or girls that's also farming learn to also do it as well, So like sharing best practice and really trying to pull everybody up to as good a level. And one of the kind of inspirations a bit behind it was, if you again look at farming, that industry is full of agronomists who are experts, who can go around and help a farmer know which seed to plant, or what density and what type of soil to get a given result. We kind of hope that we can develop a new level of expertise that can help the mussel industry become, bigger. The aim of Shell-volution is to help the industry grow to 18,000 tonnes, but also help everybody participate in it and everybody to do the job as well and as efficiently as possible, I suppose. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if that makes sense.
Total sense, yeah. I think it's excellent. But would you say it's maybe encouraging sort of collaboration?
Oh, for sure, yeah. The mussel industry, I think it's a pretty good history of collaboration. We'll maybe come on to talk about Scottish Shellfish Marketing Group in a minute, but these sorts of projects that need a bit of lead-in and a bit of scale, each individual farm couldn't do it. It's just too much. It requires too much of a wine company to support it and to host the science that's going to have to happen here. So going together,
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
The whole industry, in this case, it's all the members of ASSG and Seafood Shetland can come together and participate in this new and help steer the projects that are going to come out of this and host projects and then learn from the projects. But it wouldn't work if it wasn't for that sort of collaboration.
Yeah. But it's always good in any part of our industry when people are talking and different sectors are coming together. I think that's hugely important.
Yeah, it's been interesting. There's been a few examples, I think, like the UHI NAFC facility in Scalwood there has had a few sessions where salmon farmers and mussel farmers have been able to come together and figure out, that there are some common problems, especially in the area where plankton is maybe causing them a problem, and we're also interested in the same sort of subject, the plankton availability, and sometimes it's properly harming their salmon, and for us we're just kind of interested in all food availability, but also in the spat question, which is slightly different. The salmon guys are probably not so interested in the spat availability.
You should maybe get them on to sorting the EU out and Brexit, because I'm just thinking, you sitting in Shetland there, it just come to my mind. Many a time in the fishing industry at large, we've thought we've lost the good parts of it, but we've still got the worst parts. And in Shetland, there's no better example, because you're saying there about it's still difficult and it's more expensive to get your product to the EU markets, but I'm quite sure at any part of your islands you could look out at sea and you're going to see all the EU boats fishing our waters.
Yeah, well, yes, you would see that all around Shetland, and I think the whitefish guys and the pelagic guys would probably have a bit more to say about them than me personally. But it's I don't know if stumble into highly controversial territory, but I'm not sure if the benefits that were promised have landed anywhere. It's hard to see them anyway.
No, I don't know anybody that does see them, but I would say from the fishing guys, pelagic and demersal guys, although it's not been as good, they certainly wouldn't want back.
No, well, that's fair enough. I suppose everybody's got their views on it, and they're obviously still able to access the market that they're needing. So it's as long as it's working.
Yeah. You would have thought as well, Michael, with I love the enthusiasm and looking for new innovations and ways to increase the market. One of the best sellers of your product will be, it's such a healthy, almost into the terms used nowadays by new food writers and nutritionists, the superfood.
Yeah, I think it is kind of getting into that sort of category. So, I mean, there's so many things you can say about mussels that, and I deal with this every day. I find it hard to remember all the different elements of it, but we are trying to promote it a bit stronger, and we're going to be launching a new website shortly, which is going to be called eatscottishmussels.co.uk, and that's going to be, and it's actually live now. If any of the listeners want to type it in, it might not come up through Google until we promote it a bit more. On there, it lists the superpowers of eating mussels, like all the macronutrients in there, and then it also gives a nutrient density score for them, and it gives a bit of the story, talks about the low impact, and there's a whole heap of recipes on there as well, which folk can. I mean, there's several recipes on there that I've never tried even, and I've tried cooking mussels lots of different ways over the years, so it's a pretty good resource if anybody's interested in looking into that further.
Well, putting my chef's hat back on, Michael, I found standing in my kitchen If I had mussels in my fridge, I was happy, in a good place. And for making sauces and different dishes, mussel stock lift a dish better than anything. And I called it Asian moules. You know how it's moules marinière, which is fantastic. I was also doing an Asian moule with ginger, lemongrass, and coconut broth, and with chili through it. It's absolutely outstanding. So versatile. You could go all around the world with dishes and use mussels.
Yeah, and if you can get the fresh mussels to kind of to do all these recipes with, then there's just so many. I mean, I could read another couple off just as we're on the topic. There's a mussel chorizo and white bean stew on the new website. There's mussels with Caroline coconut curry, and also here a bit different. This one sounds like mussels in beer broth with cheesy rarebit. I mean, I personally, when I'm cooking them at home, and the kids like just moule marinière. I mean, it's hard to beat that. That was the first one you mentioned, so I think you kind of agreed. It's hard to totally beat that one, but there's a lot of different things you can do. And there was quite an innovative one. It was one of my colleagues at the Scottish Shellfish Marketing Group introduced me to Lindsay Lawrenson, the blue shell mussels. He showed me this really good one when you're putting garlic in them and grilling them in the half shell. He does that for his kind of Christmas treat in the morning on Christmas, and I've tried that a few times. It's quite a good one too.
When you mentioned about the beer broth, it reminded me equally as good as with making them with Guinness.
Yes, definitely. It doesn't have to be wine, does it? No, and it's strange because it just works. It just works.
It stands up to anything, and as I said, with the Asian dishes, you could have pretty strong spices, but you'll still get the mussel standing up through it. And when you mention having that campaign, the Eat Scottish Mussels campaign, if you want an Asian coconut, lemongrass, ginger broth with mussels, if you want to put that on, I'll send it to you.
Well, you definitely should send it to me. We'll definitely get that one on, Jim, for sure, for definite. If you're willing to share it,
I'm more than delighted to share it. It's visual as well. It's it looks fantastic as well. It's absolutely and I'm not just going to say it's all my work. It's like probably most chefs would agree. We copy, we steal, we.
Yeah, is that the best compliment, isn't it? There's something about there's some saying about that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do like. I mean, I've banned mussels a long time now, but I still like eating them a lot. And it's kind of like, I suppose we treat it in our house like a bit of a treat. I suppose it's kind of like a bit of a social family event now in our house when I take some home. Yeah, it's good fun. They're good fun. It's quite an occasion, when you get them all cooked up and be able to pull the lid off of the pan in the middle of the table. It's good fun.
From the way you're talking there with your house, I can almost imagine the family will be saying, what are we having with mussels tonight?
No, I wouldn't do it to them every day. I think that they probably would protest too much at that, but definitely a couple of times a month is well received. Yeah, half the time I probably would like to remember to grab them off the harvest boat, but I just kind of forget. I get trouble for not remembering to grab them on the way.
Yeah, we're all guilty of that one. Can you tell us, going on, Michael, about the role of the SSMG?
Yeah, well, that's the Scottish Shellfish Marketing Group. Yeah,
sorry, just got tongue-tied.
But a lot of the time yeah, it's easy done with that one. But a lot of the time, for that reason, we just refer to it as Scottish Shellfish. Okay. That's a cooperative that we joined, I think in 2009, we joined that. We just bought a small mussel farm that was already a member of Scottish Shellfish. And the board at the time and the MD at the time said to us, well, you can't be half in, half out, guys. What are you going to do? So we sort of had to have a hard think because we were really super independently minded and we weren't really sure if we wanted to go in or no, but I'm glad we did because it's been a really powerful, what would that be now, 15 years of growth. I think back in those days, the group was maybe turning over, maybe 6-7 million and new we're probably 4 or 5 times that new in terms of how much is going through that entity. And it's there's 100 people in a factory in Bells Hill in Glasgow and an administration and really skilled management team there. And they're kind of looking after it all for us. And we are able to service all the kind of what would you say for this now, like the the value added, the vacuum packed and the processed. I hate to say the word processed, but basically we have to put them in a pack to get them to the customers. So we do all that. And we also do some live sales as well through the co-op now into Billingsgate and all the food service sector. So all of that is handled now through the cooperative for us and for all the other members of the co-op. So I think there's 15 members in total in the cooperative. Each one of those represents a business from uns to Argyll somewhere. There's a whole heap of us. It's basically owned by the farmers, kind of collectively. There are bigger farms than us. Well, there's one bigger farm than us. There's Blue Shell, who's bigger, and then there's everything down to maybe a one-man farmer operator who has one site. So it's the whole range is there. We can basically keep the supply going all year round because we're able to work together. So it's a really good example of that collaboration you were talking about before, Jim.
Yeah.
And this one has lasted now for decades. I mean, some of the founding members are still there. And I'm going to be kind of naughty now and admit I can't quite remember the year it started, but it's right back to the early 90s at least, I think, when it began. So it's come a long way and done a lot of good work for the industry.
I think it's fantastic to hear about that sort of things. And there's obviously, from what I can imagine, hearing you explaining it, yes, it's owned by you all and doing stuff for you all, but there must be a fantastic element of trust amongst you all as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different mindset for being your own business, just totally alone, out in the market, competing against all your...
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Your other, operators, other farmers and stuff, but we found it much better not to be destroying value by bashing each other up and working together. It's hard work. I have to stress, it often is quite hard work. There's decisions come along all the time we have to take that are maybe no easy to see the path and stuff, but it's certainly been worthwhile, to build up SSMG into what it is today. It's something that we're all super proud of. And yeah, you got to trust each other, that's for sure, but it can work. My experience of it now, this far in, and I've been on the board for most of that time and probably done more AGMs and members meetings than I can shake a stick at. And yeah, for sure, sometimes folk have frustrations, but there's way more worked than hasn't worked with it. So yeah, it's been good.
But it's obviously you feel that, because that's a thing I often feel strongly about, is people think investment is about pumping money into it, but obviously from the way you describe this organisation, it's been a big investment of your time as well.
Time has been a big part of it for sure. It has required money too, and we've basically reinvest the profit and you try and kind of build it up, and we've invested heavily in the facility in Bells Hill, and it's a really cracking factory now. It's a really great processing unit, we really great staff, and we always get good audits and stuff, and all of that hard work being put in over the years by the management teams and all the staff is incredible. It doesn't run itself by any means, but the fact that we've managed to get it as good as it is super satisfying. I wouldn't have worked without the input of the farmers and dedicating a lot of time to look after the governance and the direction and setting the strategy and all these sorts of things. That's been a big journey. Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah. Have there any unique campaigns?
We tend to work a lot with the retailers, each individual. They all want their own things. I guess there's they're heading up the Eat Scottish Mussel campaign and helping us to launch the website. It's Crowney State money that's helping us employ an ambassador there that helps the whole sector. So that's been a really interesting intervention, I suppose, to try and help us raise the profile, and that's resulting in the website, which we mentioned earlier. Also, which, while I'm on it, the topic, I forgot to mention, there's also an Instagram page, eat.scottish.mussels on Instagram, if people prefer that platform. And that's going to have the same sort of recipes and photos and information on there. But yeah, a lot of it, the journey's been like working with people like Waitrose, Marks and Spencer's, Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Asda, Lidl, Aldi. And if I miss one now, I'm going to get big trouble. Morrison's, did I say them already? So, all the big retailers in the UK, we have as really valuable customers right now, and we're super happy to work with them. And a lot of people eat or buy their seafood in those environments. So that might not be where you would typically go, Jim. If you were sourcing for your restaurant, you'd be going to your Campbell's connection, the wholesaler and so on. But for the general public, we're needing to get the stuff put right in front of them in that sort of place.
Okay, now, in my memory, I would get a 5 kilo bag of your mussels. Obviously, they must be in different size of packs for retail.
Yeah, that's true. Generally, they would be in either kind of half kilo vacuum packs in a cardboard sleeve, or they would be maybe in 2 times 250. And we're always trying to understand what the customer is looking for and what do they value about the type of packaging they're getting, because we cook the mussels and put them in the vacuum pack, so they're arriving to the supermarket pre-cooked, but they're in a fresh sauce, so they're pretty much ready to eat. But there is heating instructions on all the packs, so they're super easy. You don't need to worry about the safety of these products. You don't need to know about should the mussels be closed at a certain point or should they be open at a different point. Just heat them up, eat them. They're fine. They're easy. Also, we do sell live into some of these sort of retailers, but more and more of the fresh fish counters have closed over the years. So we've had to adapt that sort of scenery as well, that it's changing. And we've got our eye on future changes. I don't want to say too much more about it today, but we're super excited about following what the customers are looking for in the future, and we're going to be continuing to try and improve how we present mussels to people in a way that they would be excited to try them and keep on trying them. But what we do right now works quite well. It's given us a really good, steady, ongoing business, but we've got to keep innovating in the processing and the sales and marketing side of things too.
I'm sorry if I'm jumping back and forth, but it's just been thinking when you mentioned, when we're talking there about the seaweed, you can't put it in now. When my granny was alive, the first 2 things that would go in when she was making a pan of soup was mussels and dulse seaweed.
Okay. So she was almost like you say ahead of her time there, because that's quite a trendy ingredient nowadays, right?
That's true. Yeah. So where do you see the future for Shetland Mussels Ltd in the industry?
Hopefully, as the industry kind of matures and gets a bit more knowledgeable, and that will still be part of it. I'd like to hope we can get some growth in our company as the industry grows towards 18,000 tons. I would like to think we could be a small part of the extra bit, but I hope we remain a part of a really vibrant industry that everybody is doing well in. We're quite close to a lot of our colleagues at SSMG and other farmers that's no inside that cooperative, and you just like to see the industry doing well everywhere. So I'm just kind of hoping it continues to, as we say up here, pick away, do all right. We're not necessarily going to be launching to the moon, but we just like to kind of see it going steady and going quite well.
For being a live product, are you quite comfortable about going beyond Europe?
Oh, there has been examples of folk exporting live product further away. I think the Middle East comes to mind. I'm not sure about the Far East, but I don't have any strong views on that at the moment, Jim. I think we always try and kind of work with what's nearest to us to start with. But I mean, there probably is some really exciting opportunities out there. So if anybody's listening to this podcast wants to get in touch with Scottish Shellfish Marketing Group and discuss that, then drop us a line by all means. Everything's possible, I think.
There's certainly a market, whether it's a case of you can get to that market.
At the right price points, yeah, that's the thing, because mussels are grown in other regions like Chile and New Zealand, so we're in a big mussel production scene, and we're in the UK, and we could access Europe, but I think when you start going further afield, then we'd be up against some of the big boys from those other countries I mentioned.
I don't know too much about the other countries, but when you mention New Zealand, I think of the green lip mussels, but I would say I would have a Scottish mussel before a green lip New Zealand mussel.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know a few of the New Zealanders. We do source some of our machinery from New Zealand, where we used to, when we were setting up the boats that we run now. The New Zealander guy, a guy called Joe Franklin, he would say, and he might hear this, you never know. He would say that the mussels were always best that were nearest to where you were eating them at any given time. So I don't know if that was just his line when he was selling machines to around the world in different places, but certainly having them fresh Scottish mussels in Scotland or Scottish mussels in the UK, I think that's definitely the best way to go. But I would say, personally, I prefer the blue mussel over the green lip. I would agree with you on that.
Oh, totally, every time. Although you wouldn't convince a New Zealander of that.
No, I think you'd have a hard job if you were sitting in Auckland trying to convince one of those guys.
But Aussies and New Zealand, how they get on to each other, I think you would find you would have a market in Australia.
Yeah, you never know, yeah. Kind of like converse marketing strategy or something there.
Yeah. You know, there's some myths and misunderstandings on different seafood. Is there any in mussels? Because I know that it's another thing I mentioned to that nutritionist in a recent past podcast. We used to be told when we were kids, you eat your fish and you'll be clever at school. Well, it's not going to make you clever, but it certainly gives you a healthier brain.
Well, I think probably science was coming behind that myth and proving that if you consume your omega-3s, then you're certainly doing your brain function a lot of good. Yeah. So maybe there is something in it after all. I mean, there is other myths involved with shellfish, and I suppose maybe they came the one that maybe folk will remember is you can only enjoy mussels without an R in the month. I suppose that's typically trying to lead folk away from consuming mussels in the summertime when, natural plankton blooms could be going around and causing the mussels to become a little bit toxic. But nowadays, we have a really amazing testing program that means that every morning before we go and harvest any of the mussels that we're selling, we've got guys going out in boats, grabbing samples, taking them to the lab and getting them checked. So there's been no recalls now or 10 years and more now, that we're just kind of well beyond that sort of problem at the moment. I think that was one example. Like, were you thinking of any other specific ones, Jim, when it came to mussels?
It certainly enhances our sexual abilities.
Well, one thing I do know, I'm not going to comment on that directly, I think, Jim, but I would say that the sales of shellfish, both through the group of mussels and oysters, and I forgot to name drop earlier on that Gordon and the work that they're doing on oysters within the group is really cool as well. But our sales in February, it's one of our best months. I think it's actually maybe better as Christmas. Yeah, so that is true. I think there must be some link between the romance of Valentine's Day and sales of shellfish.
Obviously, it would maybe be people I knew well, was friendly with, but if I was giving them something with mussels or oysters, I would say to them, well, look, just remember, I'm not responsible for the outcome.
Yeah, you need to send a disclaimer, yeah. That'd be the way to go.
Yeah. If you yourself were sitting having a meal in the evening, what would be your favourite? Would it be seafood?
Definitely. We eat a lot of seafood locally here. I think one of my go-to favourites, if I was going to opt out of mussels, there's a hake curry that I really, really like. That's kind of one of my favourite things to do. But it's hard to go wrong with the seafood that we have available up here. The options are endless. But I will just quickly come back and say you can't really beat mussels for a bit of theatre in your home. I think in terms of just doing that, I think it's a really good one.
Yeah, I mean, I put them in so many things, paellas, and it's not just a bowl of mules. They just go. I just love using them in so many things, cold as well in salads.
Yeah, what you were saying about using them, the stock, it's something I'm maybe not chefing enough to get into that level of detail, but I would imagine that is quite a useful additional use for the stock that you get out of them. Yeah, that's something to think about.
Just for a soup or a sauce, anything like that, they just lift it. Something fantastic. Dead simple, and I could certainly send you stuff like that, but it's...
Well, if we could share it with the listeners through the Eat Scottish Mussels website, then it would all be really valuable stuff to do. And if you're up in Shetland, Jim, then we should maybe meet up and we could have a chat.
I really intend doing that, hopefully before too long. Can you just go over again, where can people or listeners see what you're doing online? Where could you go?
Well, I think the best too, is going to be this eatscottishmussels.co.uk. If you Google that, you should find it. And also on Instagram, if you put in eat.scottish.mussels, then you'll get the Instagram page, which has some photos of some mussel farmers. And I'm afraid my mugshot is on there as well, if Hawker Nosy, as to what I look like. But further up the page is young Sam Lawrenson, and there's a lot of good stuff on there, a lot of good content. And we're going to keep adding to it and try and kind of help tell the story of what we're doing and what we're about.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Michael. I really enjoyed that. And you've got a great product. It's super healthy and can only be going one way, and that's up. Well done. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and thanks, Jim, for having me along. It's been good fun.
Thank you.